Hey guys, my name is Shai, and this particular reading is going to be for people who are letting go. It's going to mean something different for everyone, all the different things you could possibly be letting go of. But this energy is pretty heavy. You're probably already feeling it, so you'll know if this is for you right now or if it's not. I wouldn't be surprised if you are clicking off, because this is a specific focused message, okay? Whew. I am feeling it. So the feeling here is that perhaps the struggle isn't so much in the loss itself, the loss or the separation or the moving on from, right? The separation, the distance. Of course, that might be painful or challenging in and of itself, but that doesn't feel like that's the heart of the issue. It feels like there is some other type of fear here, something else that you fear. And it might even feel like, the only word I can think of is a horror. The horror. What is most horrifying here? What is the big horrible thing here? It might not be, at least for some, it might not be the separation or the distance or the loss in and of itself. There's some type of more heart-wrenching thing that we are facing. So this is like it is a fear-facing moment. That is actually what this boils down to. And it is a moment of fear that you are moving through. Some of you may have heard me talk about what I like to call the fear phase of awakening. And this is a little bit like that. It's in a different context than what I usually say or what I'm usually referring to, but I think that's a really helpful way of looking at this here. It's a fear phase of awakening. And that actually makes this very exciting, because when we go through these phases of fear, when we have to face the fear, that's the beginning of a new period of awakening or healing, if you want to call it that, or a new journey. There's something on the other side of this phase of fear. There's something on the other side after we face this fear and after we work through this. There's something on the other side of it. And that's why this is exciting. So, of course, it's always okay to pull your energy back, to take your attention off this, and to just relax and chill out and distract yourself. It's really important that you know when to do that, when to just go, this is too much for me right now. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to relax. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to think of something else. That is really important that you know when to do that. But then also, at the same time, also knowing when you're ready to kind of to face it and to move through it. That is an individual process, right? But there is a time for both methods. Okay. So big boy Saturn coming out first with truth. So just before I sat down to do this, I was outside, I was walking, and the message I was getting was, it's only possible to fully love yourself once you can fully see and accept everything that you are, the truth of your whole self. That includes all of the things that you might feel aren't very good things about yourself. That includes things you are afraid of. So that includes a lot of stuff that's hard to look at, hard to digest, right? It's hard to look at and hard to digest. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Perhaps for some people, because I do feel a wide variety of how you could be working through this, right? Perhaps some people are working through letting go of a old way of being or of old pieces of the ego, right? Old habits. And that might be kind of realizing some kind of unsavory, unpalatable things about the self and accepting that and realizing that's part of human nature, right? That's part of who you are, and that's okay. And you need to see those things and accept those things about yourself so that you can actually fully love yourself. For others, it could be similar in theme here, but quite a bit different, where perhaps you've gone through some type of loss and you're even going through a grieving process. And that doesn't need to be an actual physical death, although perhaps for some it is some type of loss, right? And you got to think about what is the actual fear related to the loss. Is it the loss or the separation or the distance itself, or is it that thing, that other thing that is more horrible, that is harder to see, to even allow yourself to see, harder to look at? That's why Saturn is coming out with truth. And that's why it's Saturn coming out with truth, because it's hard to do it and it's a challenge, but it is going to be so worth it. Okay, it will be so worth it. Saturn's lessons might be some of the most challenging and the ones that we might have to go through kicking and screaming, but they are the most worthwhile. The most worthwhile. New moon in Libra, a new romantic cycle begins. For some, that word romantic might have particular meaning. For others, it's the beginning of a new, right? It's like I was saying, on the other side of this fear-facing moment, it is this new awakening or this refreshment. It's the new cycle. It's the new cycle. Saturn and Libra. Saturn and Libra. Some of you will inevitably have Saturn in Libra. early 80s babies. Saturn and Libra. Balancing spirituality and practicality with the full moon in Pisces. And literally the new moon in Scorpio, work through your fears. Inevitably, there's going to be at least a few of you who are watching this around the new moon in Scorpio, or at least in Scorpio season. I'm filming this in Libra season of 2024, but Scorpio season is coming up, and that new moon in Scorpio, that is one of the biggest fear-facing days of the year, right? One of the whole week around the new moon in Scorpio, the biggest fear-facing weeks of the year. So just keep that in mind if you're deep in that scorpionic zone, okay? The balancing spirituality and practicality, the way I'm feeling this is we actually want to be a little bit careful of over analyzing or over psychoanalyzing. Perhaps if you've been having dreams and you're really deeply trying to figure out the meaning, that is probably fruitful to an extent, but be careful how far you take that. Same thing if you're thinking about how am I creating reflections in the world, right? How is my vibration creating reflections in my reality? Again, that is fruitful and probably a very beneficial line of inquiry, but be careful not to take it too far, because then you can wind up in that situation where you start stinging yourself with your own scorpionic tail, with your own scorpion's tail, right? And you start thinking that it can become really, really, really easy to pile on a ton of blame on yourself for things that you're not responsible for. So balancing the spirituality and practicality. I hope you kind of see what I mean there, right? Not taking the analysis or the psychoanalysis or the law of attraction or, vibrational manifestation, all of those things which are very important and important for us to do within reason. It's important to keep it balanced and not to take any one line of inquiry or any one line of thought to the uttermost extreme. That's almost like when you go to the extremes, that is where you encounter your own fears, and that is where you have to work through your fears. So inevitably, we all go there at some point in our lives, right? We go all the way to the extreme, and everyone has their own way of experiencing extremes, right? Everybody has their own way of experiencing extremes, but be careful about what you do when you're in those extreme places. Be careful about what conclusions you draw when you're in those extreme places. And I would actually say especially if you're in an extreme emotional state, right? Having any type of extreme emotions. Of course, the negative emotions, don't really come to conclusions or make decisions when you're in extremely negative emotions. I would also say don't come to conclusions or make decisions when you're in extreme positive emotions either. On the one hand, you have depression. On the other hand, you have mania. On the one hand, you have panic attacks. On the other hand, you have euphoric attacks. It's pretty easy to see how panic attacks are bad. It can be harder to see how euphoric attacks are bad. But I think we all do this to an extent, right? And whatever your extremes are, some people's extremes are less extreme and some people's extremes are more extreme, but we all hit our own extremes. And sometimes when we're in that euphoric space, it can be just as dangerous as being in the despair or the panic or the depression space, because we can start thinking things like, it's going to be perfect forever. Everything's up and up and up forever. Nothing's ever going to go wrong ever again. It's up and up and up forever. And that's obviously not a very good space to make decisions in. So, and this is why we have the Libra here, right? The Libra, this is the rebalancing. And here it's depicted with the scales in balance. So with the Scorpio energy, you could be having massive volatility, emotionally speaking, around this. But after you face your fears and encounter and accept this truth, there is a truth for you to accept. And I do think it's important for you to really come to this truth without outside interference. Because you can get somebody else's opinion on the truth, and that would be their perspective. Their perspective is their perspective, right? Their perspective is their perspective. What is your perspective on the truth? It is important for you to come to that truth on your own, internally and without outside interference. Especially with the Saturnian influence here, because Saturn always preaching that independence, right? What does Saturn preach? Saturn preaches pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but that's not his ultimate lesson, right? That is something he teaches on the way to the lesson. He teaches, get your shit together. That is also not his ultimate lesson. That is just one of the things he teaches while you're on your way to learning the ultimate lesson. His ultimate lesson is to perceive truth clearly and without interference. And his ultimate lesson is to let it all go, to let go, to let it go, to let it go, to let it go. And it's interesting, those are two ultimate lessons, but I feel that they are almost inextricably linked, at least when we're talking about Saturn, because there's something, at least at the moment, I don't know how to separate those two concepts between perceiving ultimate truth, your truth, perceiving truth with independent clarity, and letting it go. What is it? What is it that you were letting go? That's personal, that's individual. But it goes along with seeing something clearly. Okay, we have Andromedan energy. Jump in, adventure, and say yes to change. Oh, and here we have this big eye, and here somebody is jumping into the pupil of the eye. They're jumping into the eye, seeing something clearly and jumping in. Jumping in. To me, this even feels like, I mean, what you're jumping into, that depends what you're looking at, right? Depends what you're looking at. That's different for everybody. But there's a feeling here that for some people, it might be turning around and jumping back into the fear. Have you ever done that? Have you ever encountered a fear and it was so horrifying you couldn't look at it? So horrifying, you maybe even wiped it out of your own memory. You blocked it right out. You said, that didn't happen. Moving on, I'm going to pretend that didn't happen. Or maybe you actually had, your guides, your higher self, and remove it from your memory. It is possible to have your memory like deleted. I mean, it will come back to you later, but it is absolutely possible. I say that because I've experienced it, or I've requested my guides to remove a memory, and then it comes back later when it's time. When it came back later when it was time for me to retrieve it, but they did that because I told them to. I wiped my own memory. So anyway, the point here is sometimes when you avoid a fear because it is so horrifying, you can spend years, decades, lifetimes circling around before you come back, before you're ready to face the fear. Here, what if you just turned right around and faced it right away, confronted it right away? That could save you a long, protracted cycle. And again, this is personal. You have to know that you're ready for this. You have to feel like this is the right path for you. But do give yourself that chance to feel into it. What if you just look at it right now? And what if you jump into it right now? What if, right? What if? Would that be a good thing for you to do? Only you can know. Envy. Envy, envy. This card has been coming up. This card has been coming up. The sun at the bottom of the deck. I'm going to shuffle that back in. Sixth chakra. So again, that's the third eye. The third eye with Archangel Metatron. Okay, that's too many cards that just fell out, but I will show them to you, then I'm just going to take them off just really quick to see if these have meaning for you guys. Man holding a coin, healer of the ages, victory, deceit, victory over deceit, third chakra, solar plexus, Archangel Chamuel. I'm not going to read those, but I'll just show them to you. This envy card, I'm a little bit hung up on it, but I also have the feeling like it's kind of tired and it's kind of tedious. So I'm not actually going to dig into this. Because I don't really feel like this is that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. Perhaps somebody is struggling with the realization that they are sometimes envious of others. Is that something that you don't want to admit to yourself? Is it hard to say, yeah, I have envy, I am sometimes envious of others? If that is something that you feel a lot of shame around, it's okay. Everyone feels envious sometimes, and it's really not that big of a deal. I think it's a natural part of human emotions. We see something, we go, I'm kind of envious, you know? And envy can be a very almost lighthearted thing, right? It can be an almost lighthearted thing. You see somebody with hair that you just love so much and you really wish you could have their hair, and you have hair envy now. That can be a lighthearted thing. It doesn't need to be a big black bleak thing. So perhaps somebody feels shame around being envious, and the feeling is it doesn't need to be that big of a deal. It doesn't. It's okay. It's okay to sometimes feel envy. It is a natural part of being human. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that envy card. You know, I'm not even going to flip that over because there's nothing wrong with feeling envious. It's okay. That could be part of what you need to see. It could be part of what you need to see. Oh, okay. I'm gonna keep this shorter and just get one of these Isis cards. As I am feeling, this energy is feeling much lighter. Much, 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 much lighter than it was 20 minutes ago. So I'm going to take that as a good sign. And as for Isis here, again, I was outside before I started this, and a blue heron flew right in front of me, low flying, only about maybe 6 feet above the ground, 2 meters, just like I don't usually see them flying that low, right? It just flew right in front of me, really close. It was really beautiful. The blue heron, of course, being associated with Isis. Ew, that sound really bothered me. Sorry. Maybe that was some kind of frequency we needed to hear. Sometimes particular sounds resonate in a certain way, and it can shake it up. Goddess of 10,000 names. I like that because I was getting a lot of Hathor energy last night. And there was always the perspective that all goddesses are aspects of the one goddess, right? Goddess of 10,000 names, Isis, endless emanations of the priestess. Endless emanations of the priestess. Isis, with many names, forms, associations, and expressions, is referred to as the goddess of 10,000 names. A name holds power. It defines and energizes or limits. The name, faces, and roles that you play are just one part of your being, yet you exist beyond them, beloved initiate, as a vast being. You are currently realizing that you are not limited by previous identities you held. Instead, you are becoming more of your whole self. Enjoy the uncovering of even more of you. Just like the Lady Isis, you are a multifaceted, multidimensional being. It is most helpful at this phase in your path that you learn not to attach to the roles or identities that may have once held great importance for you or others relating to you. Wow, so letting go of roles and identities, both your own roles and identities and both the roles and identities that belong to others who are close to you. We're letting go of those things. It does not mean that you must cease to relate to that name or role, more that you are realizing it is only a part of you and there is even more of you wishing to express itself now. The roles you are needing to move beyond might be mother, executive, healer, good person, strong person, always in control, daughter, teacher or guru, grandmother, and so on. There is nothing wrong with these roles, and you may still express part of your vast self through such roles. But you are at a significant point in your inner development where you are learning that these are not who you are, but simply expressions of the eternal, endless self, uncontainable by any human descriptions. So that takes us right back around to the very beginning, where this is all about letting go, right? Letting go. And what precisely you're letting go of, well, you know what that is, right? You know what that is. And I really like that emphasized that even as you let go and expand and become more, that doesn't mean that you're actually losing that thing, right? For example, perhaps your children are getting older and you no longer need to identify as a mother the way that you did because your kids don't need you the way they used to anymore. So you can go on and, you have so much more free time to develop yourself in new ways, right? That, of course, doesn't mean that you stop being a mother. You never stop being a parent. That's impossible, right? But you can let go of that identity of being a parent. It doesn't have to be such a huge focal point of every moment of your life. It doesn't mean that you love your children any less. It doesn't mean that you're any less there for them as a parent. It just means that it doesn't take up so much of your energy because now is the time to move on to different types of self-expansion. Same thing if you are letting go of a person, a place, or a thing, right? Letting go of a person, a place, or a thing. There is, of course, the very normal and reasonable fear to feel that as you're letting go, does that mean that you're going to lose the love, right? Especially if this is a passed on loved one or letting go of a thing that has memories attached to it, right? There's that fear of, how do I let go? Because if I let go, then I'm severing the love or losing the love, or the love will decay. That doesn't have to be the case. It doesn't have to be the case. There are different forms of letting go. That is, I think, very important to think of here. Because, sometimes when we go through a breakup, for example, we might let go of that person and let go of the love. At least letting go of having that love be a prominent part of our lives. It's more of we have a memory of the love. And maybe that's why it can be, depending on the relationship and the breakup, it can be quite difficult to let go of a relationship, because if you're having trouble letting go of a relationship, you're having trouble letting go of the love, and it can be very difficult to separate that out and figure out how you want to do that. And that's why we can grieve when we're going through the loss of a relationship. But again, for example, when a loved one passes on, when a loved one makes their transition, to some extent we need to let them go, right? We need to let go and let them go so that we're not drowning in grief every moment for the rest of our lives. There does need to be a letting go. However, in that case, you're not letting go of the love, right? The love between you and your loved one that has transitioned is not, you're not losing that, right? You're not losing that. So it's very interesting, right? The different ways of letting go and how you might understand the letting go process differently. And I think this is just very important, because you might, in your memory, you might think of another time that you let go, right? You might think of another time that you let go of something or someone, and perhaps you did it differently, right? Perhaps as you let go, you actually let go and forgot about it and moved on, and you don't feel that love anymore, right? Maybe that was one way of you letting go. And now that you're trying to let go, you don't want it to go like that because you don't want to lose the love. You don't want to let go of the love in this case, right? In this case. And just know that every situation is different. Every letting go process is different. It's different for different people. It's different for you in different times in your life. It's different for you no matter which, like depending on the scenario, depending on the situation, depending on what you're letting go of and why you're letting go of it and how that's playing out. So there's not one ultimate way of letting go. And that's, I think, another reason why Saturn makes such a big deal about you coming to this truth or to this perception or to this understanding without outside interference, because even if it is positive, good advice, well-meaning, beneficial, loving ideas that someone else is giving you, that can even mess you up, right? That can mess you up. Good advice can derail you. Positive feedback can make it hard for you to continue. Compliments can confuse you. Receiving, sometimes, right? Sometimes even receiving good things from others makes it harder for you because it muddies things up and makes you distracted, and you lose your own sense of what it is for you, right? Even referencing your own memories to different parts in your life, to different times that you've gone through something similar. Even that can mess you up because it doesn't need to be that way this time. You can create a new way. It can be different this time. So and that's another reason why it is less about the analyzing and the psychoanalyzing and the worrying about how your vibration is affecting reality. It's important that it's less about that, because it's going to be more about, what do you want to do with this? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to work through this? What narrative are you writing yourself? What conclusions are you going to draw as you move forward? It's less about what the message is. It's less about what the memory is. It's less about what happened. It's even less about what is actually true, and more about, what are you going to do with this information? Yeah, they're showing me somebody's opening up a letter, and it says a bunch of stuff inside, and you're looking at this letter. It's not really about what's in the letter. What's more important for you to focus on is, what are you going to do with what's in the letter? How are you going to respond to that letter? And I don't mean replying. I mean, how are you going to respond in life? What are you going to do with that information? What are you going to do with that data? How are you going to move forward? What are you going to create? What story are you going to write for yourself? How are you going to direct the film that is your life? What are you going to focus on? What scene are you going to shoot next? What dialogue are you going to write for yourself? It's more about what you're doing moving forward and what you're doing with the experience than what it actually is. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Sending you guys so much love and light, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.